think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Amigos, bienvenidos a un podcast más de Documentos Clasificados, donde platicamos de cómics y de todo lo que tiene que ver con este mundo de las historietas. Para ello quiero dar la bienvenida el día de hoy a mi compañero y amigo Jaime Carreño, que está ahí en Canadá. ¿Cómo estás, Jaime?
¿Qué tal, Daniel? Hola a todos por nuestros seguidores. Gusto
Muy bien, y bueno, pues, ¿qué creen? Que hoy tenemos a este invitado que está aquí de lujo. Es Joe Rubinstein, nació el 4 de junio de 1958, es un dibujante de cómics, es entintador principalmente, se asocia con el entintado de Marvel Comics de esta empresa, y bueno, pues entre sus trabajos más destacados, no quisiera omitir ninguno, pero a mí se me viene a la mente lo que es el manual oficial del universo Marvel, los 4 números de Wolverine, de la miniserie de Chris Claremont, y este trabajo que está aquí, que es Infinity Gauntlet, un excelente, excelente trabajo. Pero bueno, mi estimado Miguel, Jaime Carreño, ¿le puedes dar la bienvenida al buen Joe Rubinstein?
Yes. Thank you, Joe, for being with us. It was really an honor for us to have some minutes from your time, and I really appreciate that you have time to speak to us, your audience in Latin America.
You're welcome. And in honor of the fact that I am broadcasting to the south, I'm not wearing any pants.
That's good, Joe.
So
Okay.
If this interview goes south, so am I. Okay.
That's good, Joe. So,
Right.
Without further ado, we want to start with some questions. So, I have two questions in one single one. Can you tell us what was your first job in comics? That's the first one. And if you have to decide which word you are most proud of, what would that be?
When you say my first job in comic books, are you asking for my very first pro job, solo job, or the first job I ever did as a comic book artist?
Your first job in the industry, whatever you think is good.
Well, I mean, when I was 13 years old, I started to work at Dick Giordano's studio as a general errand boy and coffee maker and all that. I do bad coffee, by the way. And by the time I was 15, I was his general assistant. And by the time I was 17, I got my first freelance work, which was a job called Tales of the Great Disaster, appropriately enough, in the back of Commandy with a new penciler named Michael Nasser at the time. Now he's known as Michael Netzer. The one individual job I'm most proud of is a job I did for the American Bible Society, which is a respectful retelling of the crucifixion, which was in a graphic novel called The Unforgiven by Dick Giordano, penciled it. Terry Austin inked it. Nobody ever saw it. So it is on my Facebook gallery if anybody wants to see it. But as a totality, the work I think I'm most proud of is all of the manifestations of the Justice League of America, formerly known as the Justice League. I can't believe it's not the Justice League. Very well drawn by McGuire, and very funny, good scripts by Giffen and DeMatteis.
They were absolutely great, those guys writing that Justice League, absolutely. Okay,
Déjame, ¿quién fue quien lo influencia? Porque bueno, pues ya nos dijo pues en dónde empezó y qué trabajos inició, pero ¿quién fue quien lo influencia para ser dibujante o entintador?
The question, Joe, is who influenced you to become a comic book artist and or an inker or an artist in the comic industry?
Well, I emigrated from Israel when I was 5 years old. And my older cousin had comic books, the Superman family comics, I think. And since I didn't speak the language, I guess I was attracted to the pictures. I could see them and they were entertaining. And then I just, like many little kids, decided to draw my own little pictures with crayon on lined paper. Then at 11 years old, I started to go to the Art Students League of New York, which is where I was living at the time. And comic books, like so many of you out there, I'm sure, was just a wonderful, fascinating art form. And that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And here I am. So what was the second part of the question?
No, who influenced you?
Right. Ironically enough, so I was working at Dick's studio when I was 13. And I read an interview in a wonderful magazine Roy Thomas put out called Alter Ego number 10, interview by Gil Kane. Gil Kane's certainly one of the greatest comic book artists who ever lived.
Absolutely.
And he said he should have been an inker first to learn the business before he went on to penciling. I went, well, okay, I'll do that. Even though I want to be like most people, I want to be a comic book penciler. And so I started to get good at it. I had one of the greatest inkers of all time right there, Dick Giordano, who would take out time from his deadlines to show me things. I had files to look at that other people, you know, collections of comic books. And I was 13 in 1971, no internet. So to find that kind of stuff was very hard, but Dick and Neil Adams, they already had the files there, so I could search through them. I could see the process. I started to get ink work. I got good at it. And I decided that instead of being a comic book penciler, I would rather be a painter, which is what I've done since I was 13 years old as well. Ironically enough, Gil Kane and I hated each other. It's he was not a nice guy. I mean, there may be people out there who love him, and maybe there's somebody out there that he gave her away at her wedding and all that stuff. But he did not treat me well, and I hated him and he hated me back. But I would have gladly worked on his stuff the rest of my life as long as I didn't have to talk to him. And I'm not sure when he died, but in 1995, I did 3 issues of Superman over Gil's layouts, and I was very, very happy to do them, and I think they turned out well.
Yeah. Oh, he was a great artist, I remember. And I hear that many people here say something about Gil Kane. I'm not going to judge that. It's just he was a great penciler, very dynamic, and his covers in comic book are legendary.
You know, there are a lot of people in history, if you delve anywhere into their personal backgrounds, you won't like them anymore. I mean, it's like, who would want to have dinner with Beethoven, you know, or Wagner, or you know, I mean, there are just some loathsome people out there who did some wonderful artwork. And for instance, my paintings and drawings were very heavily influenced by Degas. And Degas was a raving anti-Semite, and I'm Jewish. And I look at the work and I try and forget who did it and just admire it for what it is.
Wow, that's brave of you. Daniel?
I don't know about that.
Jaime, tu pregunta.
Okay. Well, now, many people sometimes don't understand the difference between an inker and a finisher. Can you explain us a little bit of that?
Well, I think the first question is many people don't understand what an inker is. Because very often you say, oh, I'm a comic book inker. They go, oh, you do the colors? No, I don't do the colors, but sometimes I actually do. An inker takes brush and pen and marker and their fingers and anything that makes a mark with ink and goes over somebody else's graphite drawings. If the pencils are very tight and all the details are in, hopefully all the inker has to do is follow the lines and do no damage like a doctor promises to do. Mm-hmm. But previously, people, greats like John Buscema and his brother Sal, because the editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, wanted good storytelling on as many books as possible, he would have them do layouts, which meant there were no black areas. Most of the details were gone. Sometimes it was very sketchy. Sal was not anywhere near as sketchy as John. And then the inker was expected to flesh it out and to be the finisher. Now he's deciding mood and lighting and details and all that other stuff. So the inker is then the finisher because he's responsible more for the finished product. Now, just to explain what an inker is,
Mhm.
if a composer of music is presented with a blank sheet of paper, which is a very formidable thing to deal with, they have to create something out of nothing. And then when it's done, more often than not, they have to hand the work to a musician. And they say, please don't hurt my baby. You know, please do justice by my work. So do they hand it to a guy who plays a piccolo or guitar? Because it'll be completely different depending upon the instrument you use. So let's say they hand it to me and I'm the guitarist. It says, okay, great. But now, do I do flamenco or classical or jazz or rock? Because all those will also change the nature of the work. So theoretically, the composer's going, okay, this is the kind of music I want to be played this way. Can you please follow through on those concepts and not just change it to your own liking? So there are a great many inkers who will be presented with somebody's pencils and go, well, I don't care what you drew, I'm going to make it mine. And Dick Giordano taught me, my emphasis is I want to return what you drew, hopefully better, or at the very least not worse. So inking is very boring if you do it the same way all the time. So I try to change my approach depending upon what I'm presented with. And in effect, run the relay race. The man has handed it off to me, and I'm supposed to keep going in one direction, and it's not my right to just go off anywhere I feel like. So that's why I feel the responsibility first to myself, then the penciler, to try and make the work what it was intended to be.
Okay, well, Joe, one of the most iconic work you did was the Infinity Gauntlet. That is for sure, at least for many of your fans. And one of the things that make interesting for me is you were working with two different artists at that time, the great George Perez and the wonderful Ron Lim. And many people didn't notice that the penciler changed because it was feeling that almost the same look was there. That's exactly what I thought you were trying to do. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you know, personally, apparently nobody thought to tell me anything, because all of a sudden I get 3 or 4 or whatever pages, and then suddenly it's Ron Lim. Like, what happened? Where did this come from? No, I inked Ron on the Silver Surfer for a couple of years, so it's not like I was unfamiliar with his work. I think Ron was trying to be more George, possibly, than he usually drew. Though ironically enough, what George was drawing was originally established by Ron in the Silver Surfer. And then George took over and did the Infinity Gauntlet. And then he was doing another book over at Marvel, which was a very heavy character book. I don't remember what it was. And he just felt he just could not do both. So he thought the logical thing would be handed to Ron. Ron was trying to be a little bit more like George, and I was following what was in front of me again. Because if Ron had drawn something completely different than George, I wouldn't have forced it to look like George unless the editor turned to me and go, okay, erase this stuff and try and make it look like George. But I wasn't. I was just trying to follow what I do, which is what I always do. I found out decades later that George inked the covers on Infinity Gauntlet 4, 5, and 6, which, by the way, I was not happy about. because George was saying, I'm not mad, I didn't leave, I just couldn't stay. So that was the sort of signal that George Perez is still on board. So.
Oye, mi estimado Joe, ¿qué tan diferente es trabajar con diferentes, qué tan especial es trabajar con diferentes dibujantes? Porque sabemos que has dibujado con muchos y con muy buenos. Además de esto, te pregunto, ¿cuál crees que sea para ti el mejor dibujante de cómics?
Daniel's asking, how complicated or easy is to draw with different pencilers, and you've been working with great pencilers around your during your career, and in your opinion, who's the greatest comic artist?
Okay, well, first, I forgot to do this. Okay, okay, but you'll notice I didn't go too far this time, but it could happen. Is it complicated to work on different people? When I was doing the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, which is an encyclopedia we did over the course of 20 years, I was the one and only inker for dozens, 100, I don't know, different pencilers. So I was sort of the anchor. And while I, again, do not try to make all the work homogeneous look alike, I was holding it all together with my kind of a line. And one day I don't ink on one piece at a time because it's wet. I switch from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and then I come back. And I was sitting there inking something like Al Milgrom, Bill Sienkiewicz, John Buscema, Lee Weeks. And it suddenly hit me. I went, how am I doing this? Because I am switching from pen to brush to different pen to different brush to style to style to style. I went, how am I doing this? And I thought, I'm just dealing with the stimuli. I see Bill Sienkiewicz draw with a very hard angular line. I pick up my hard angular brush. I see Al Milgrom use the big greasy pencil to do big fat strokes. I drop the pen, I pick up my brush, I do big fat greasy strokes. So I just try to respond to what's in front of me. When you work on somebody fantastic like John Buscema, Gene Colan, they draw so beautifully that I have to rise to the occasion. So that's the hard part. As far as who's the greatest comic book artist who ever lived, I mean, I guess it's Jack Kirby. I don't know that anybody would ever argue that point. But the guy who took my breath away, who just, I was amazed, was Joe Kubert. Because when you open up a Tarzan comic of Joe Kubert, and there's this scene of Tarzan fighting this gorilla, and all the muscles are straining on Tarzan, and the fur is flying off of the gorilla and the jungle, and it would just take my breath away. So Joe was my favorite artist of all time. But there's no denying that you open up a Jack Kirby 2-page spread and you go, oh my God, it's the whole universe on 2 pages.
Wow, that's good. Okay, well, then a little bit related to this. In your opinion, which penciler do you think your style is more appropriate with? Or how do you feeling, oh, when I think in this guy, I'm feeling that this synergy, we're in sync, or not really?
Well, I'm influenced by Neil Adams and Dick Giordano. I'm also influenced by the people who influenced them, because as much as he'd like to believe that he was never influenced by anybody, Neil was influenced by Stan Drake, who did The Heart of Juliet Jones, and he was influenced by Joe Kubert, and he was influenced by Wally Wood, and a wonderful artist most of you never heard of named Tom Sawyer, who went on to be the writer-producer of the TV show Murder, She Wrote, oddly enough. So I was influenced by those guys, and the people I am most in sync with are the ones who are influenced by those guys, including Neil Adams. Because the reason I got the official Tales of the Great Disaster book is because Mike drew these pages, and I asked him if I could ink on Xeroxes. And he went, just go ahead and ink the originals. And I went, really? So I inked the originals. So he's the poor man's Neil Adams. I'm the poor man's Dick Giordano. He brings it into the editor. We get hired as a team, and then we get poor man's money. It was like, I found out I was the cheapest, least paid artist in comic books for that period of time. But, you know, I think the people that I work well with is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, right?
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's He's as wonderful a guy as he draws. And he told me the first best ink job he ever got was a thing called Dr. Strange Fate that Kevin Nolan inked, that I believe Kevin took like a long time on and did a fantastic job. He said the second greatest job he ever got was for me doing Dead Man on a monthly basis. So I think we work well together, and he draws beautifully, and I can keep up with it. You know, I think I ink Gene Colan well, and there are other people out there who I think, but here's the thing. When I ink somebody who's so stylized, I discovered Arthur Adams. I brought his work into Marvel and got him his first job. When I ink Arthur Adams, I don't think you even know I'm the inker, because Arthur is so tight, he doesn't leave much room for anybody. I inked a 3-part Eric Larson Wolverine Spider-Man thing, and when they reprinted it into one book, it was a 3-part series, they left my name off of it because nobody realized I was the inker, because I was following it so closely and sublimating my style that they didn't know there was a different inker on it. So I can do that, and I can do the more illustrative stuff. The stuff that comes most naturally to me is the illustrative stuff as done by Stan Drake and Joe Kubert and people like that.
Okay. Daniel?
Pues pudiera parecer obvia esta pregunta, Jaime. Ya conocimos un poco de cuáles son los gustos de Joe, y también ya sabemos pues, cómo trabaja y con quiénes trabaja. Pero yo quisiera ponerme en sus zapatos en un momento. Él está sentado, tiene un librero enfrente lleno de historietas y de cómics, de toda la historia de las historietas y los cómics de todas las compañías y de todas. ¿Cuál es el cómic o cuál es la historia que agarra primero para leer?
Okay. Okay, Joe, so Daniel is asking in a nutshell, you are in your drawing board, in front of you, you have 1,000 of comics, and you have to decide to read one story arc. Which one would you choose?
You call that a nutshell?
So everything he said, yes.
I think in English you would have taken half as much time, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the question is, what story do I recommend people reading in all the history of comics?
Which story Joe will have 1,000 of comics in front of you? You decide, I want to read a comic book. I want to read an arc that I love it. Which
all right.
one?
Well, firstly, I would, look, I wouldn't mind rereading the Justice Leagues I did, because they were great. And of course, I don't remember everything about them. I remember when Watchmen was coming out at the same time as something called Moonshadow by DeMatteis and Jay Muth. And I remember reading the first issue of both of these, and I went, oh my God, I got to wait 12 months for this to finish, which is kind of a weird thing. It's like, why don't I enjoy the next 12 months? Moonshadow by Mark DeMatteis is wonderful. Watchmen is wonderful. Swamp Thing by Alan Moore is great, I did try to go back and reread some stuff from my childhood recently, and I thought it was just atrocious. I went, is this good writing? And I just couldn't get through it. Something else, if you want to get people interested in, like whenever I get a new girlfriend, and I want her to understand comic books, I don't give her superheroes. I give her something by Will Eisner, like Contract with God, or whatever that thing was about. Whatever he writes is grown-up stuff in a comic book graphic form. And I think if you're tired of superheroes and you're tired of Will Eisner, is a great place to start. I'm also told, Neil Gaiman has a tremendous following. So that's probably when you get past wanting to just be a superhero, which is not to say I don't like reading. I still like reading a good superhero comic book, but sometimes you want something a little more meaty, more relating to the life you're living.
Okay, I see. Now let me go to the next question. Let's switch a little bit with the time now with the movies. When they film movies, they have to do a lot of adaptations to the original comic book or character. What is your opinion on those adaptations, those changes, or sometimes you have to see it? And what is your favorite comic movie?
I just noticed, you know how they say the camera put 10 pounds on you? I noticed that the camera's putting 10 pounds on my nose. So don't believe what you see, you know. When they did the adaptation of Wolverine in Japan that I did based on the Frank Miller miniseries I did, I was very disappointed because it was a fine movie. It was a James Bond movie. It was barely a superhero movie. But other using the location and the names of the characters, it didn't really follow my comic book. When I saw the first Thanos Endgame, you know, the first two parts, and he was beating up on the Avengers, I was very charmed because it was the closest I'd ever seen to one of my comic books come to life. Because actually, way before Infinity Gauntlet, my first job at Marvel when I was 20 years old, 19, 20, was the Avengers Annual number 7, penciled and written by, or laid out and written by Jim Starlin, and then the sequel, which was the 2-in-1 Annual. And that's the first place Thanos ever beat up on the Avengers. So if all you Infinity Gauntlet people, you should go back and read those. They were reprinted literally 15 times in 30 years. So it must have been good. Everybody liked them. I enjoy a good superhero movie. You know, amazingly enough, I don't watch all the superhero TV shows because there's too many to keep up on. You know, but I think everybody's doing a fine. Sure, some things are not as good as others, and maybe you saw this movie or like the last X-Men movie. I think the world agrees with me. The last X-Men movie with the Dark Phoenix. Mm-hmm. It could have been great. It could have been, you know, a $500 million cosmic odyssey with destroying planets and all that stuff. And it just wasn't. It was just, it just totally missed the potential of what should have been happening. So that was disappointing. But, you know, maybe I'm easily entertained because I know a lot of people can't stand the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, and I liked it.
I like it too.
Yeah. I like the part in the movie where somebody goes, so you can be fighting that Romita guy? Goes, yeah, he's a scumbag. And I laughed. I'm like the only guy in the movie theater who laughed because I got it.
You got it, of course. Right. I got it too. Daniel?
Oye, Jaime, pues se nos está acabando el tiempo. Yo quiero primero que nada preguntarle al buen Joe si nos puede hablar un poco de sus redes sociales, de su página web, de qué pueden hacer los fans y la gente que quiera ponerse en contacto con él.
Okay, well, Joe, we are almost finished. We just want to thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about you have any social media or any website where your fans can actually see your art? Maybe they're interested ordering for you. That would be great.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, I'm on Instagram with joerubinstein.com. I'm on Facebook. I have 3 different places on Facebook. My appreciation site, my fan site, Joe Rubinstein, Joseph Rubinstein. And I'm also selling prints of my work and big posters and 6-footers and all that stuff on something called MB Artist, as in Mark Burnett or Mark Bryant Artist, MB Artist. So you can find all my work there. And also there's joerubinsteinart.com in case anybody wants to order commissions or send me comic books for signing. Or I can be bought. Okay, you got money. I'm sure I can make something happen for you. So.
That's good, Joe. That's good. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, Joe. And hopefully, maybe in the future, maybe we'll be interviewed with you later on because I'm sure we have a lot of questions for you.
I have so much gossip you didn't ask about. So many people who are drug addicts and alcoholics and cheated on their wives. Oh my God.
We can talk about those stories behind stories.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe. Daniel.
Goodbye.
No, pues agradecer a toda la gente que nos ha visto en este podcast. Queremos agradecerle a Joe Rubinstein, a Jaime Carreño allá en Canadá por estar en este podcast de Documentos Clasificados. Nos vemos hasta la próxima. Muchas gracias.